My guest today is filmmaker Yasmin Afifi and her short film Jellyfish and Lobster. This is a timeless tale of finding life in the face of death, joy in the face of despair, and magic in the most unlikely places. Now, Jellyfish and Lobster is a 2023 graduation film from the National Film and Television School. It is officially selected as one of the 5 nominees for Best Live Action Short Film at the 2024 BAFTA Awards. Now, before landing this huge accolade, the film was recognized at the British Short Film Awards, where it won 3 awards: Jury Award, Best British Director, and the Best Editing. It also took home the Audience Award at Encounters and Best Short Film at Soulfest. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome BAFTA-nominated film director Yasmin Afifi and her amazing short film, Jellyfish and Lobster, to the show. Welcome, Yasmin.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, how did you get into filmmaking?
Ooh, do you want like the full story? The
Oh,
full
whatever story you want to tell.
I got into it from a very, very young age because I was born with Erb's palsy, my right arm. So it meant like the first few years of my life I was just in and out of hospital. I probably had about 11 to 12 surgeries on my arm. Um And so I was just during that period, I grew up just watching loads and loads of films. Cinema was genuinely my sort of window to the world. It gave me an understanding of the world, of people, and of stories. Just particularly during those sort of lengthy periods of isolation. Um, and so when I hit a certain age where I sort of just kind of said no to no more surgeries and just kind of wanted to live my life, and sort of just accept myself as I was. I knew then that there was something with cinema that I wanted to do. I wanted to tell stories and I wanted to sort of be that window for someone else. Um, and so I just started making loads and loads of films and working like non-film related jobs to make money to put towards making my film. So I just kind of learned by doing, um, and then I guess kind of got good at it, and then ended up at the National Film and Television School, where I made Jellyfish and Lobster.
Well, the National Film and Television School, that's one of the best schools in England, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Hollywood Reporter put it down as one of the best in the world. So it's prestigious, and I remember getting in and just thinking, you know, is this happening?
I could imagine, and you follow a long list of especially short films that have become award winning.
Yeah, like you sort of it's funny because you know the reputation that the school has, and when you first walk into the school, they've got like all the awards and all the BAFTAs and all the accolades sort of all on display. And at the time, I kind of just jokingly turned to my tutor and was like, okay, so that's the expectation, no pressure. And here we are with the BAFTA nomination. So I guess I lived up to the expectation.
You did. Well, tell us what the synopsis is of your film Jellyfish and Lobster.
It is a magical realist dark comedy about two mischievous, quite cheeky, elderly, terminally ill residents in a care home who are really just trying to make the most of their final days.
Well, when I watched your film, I saw that there was an in memory of at the end. So,
Yeah.
was Jellyfish and Lobster based on a personal story from your life?
Yeah, so I had lost my dad to cancer in 2019, and then just before starting the NFTS, my aunt, who was like a second mum to me my whole life, was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and then 6 months into being at the school, she passed away. Um, and the idea kind of came from there, where I was sort of, whilst angry at this disease for sort of the way it had just turned my family's life upside down, um, I was inspired by the way that both my dad and my aunt never allowed themselves to be defined by the illness, and still found ways to live life, and still give into joy, and kind of exist beyond the limitations of what that illness was. And so I thought, if I'm going to make a film that honors them, I'm going to do it this way, and in a way that can bring people joy and levity and laughter and hope, and still in many ways um, allow people going through the realities of that to feel seen. You know, we don't shy away from what the truth of that experience is like, but we do it with with escapism, and with magic and joy.
Well, did you do any research while writing the screenplay with those who are facing their mortality? I'm sure everyone has their own story.
I think I mostly based it on just my experiences with my dad and my aunt, and one of the things that struck me about it was, when we often at times when we're exploring grief, we're exploring it from a perspective of me losing another. So it's often my grief of losing them, or losing one other person. But I was sort of observing both of them kind of go through the process of grieving themselves, and grieving everyone around them and everything, and grieving their bodies that were slowly kind of failing them, which, that for me was an interesting perspective on grief, and something that felt universal, in a sense of not really being specific to being diagnosed with an illness, but just as we grow older and we change, I think we're constantly grieving various versions of ourselves as we progress through life. And so that that was the grief that I wanted to explore in the film, particularly with them being able to access a version of themselves from the past.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the most beautiful and sweetest films I've seen this season. It was funny, it was
So much.
heartwarming, it was full of love. The acting was superb with Flo Wilson and Syed, was it Badrea, if I said
Yeah,
that right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and then for you as a director, how did you approach a storyline with Grace facing her immortality?
Well, I approached it by just wanting to have a character who had nothing left to lose, and that was the conversation I had. Is what happens when the kind of the bar for what is appropriate or inappropriate goes out the window, because you know, the second your life has a limitation on it, you start living life as if it didn't have a limitation on it. You almost start living as if you were immortal, because you just you act and do without any sense of consequences, because ultimately what consequence could be worse than losing your life, which is what you are on the brink of doing. um and that was such a fun space to sit in. And in working with the actors as well, it was really giving them the freedom to just kind of be honest and be present, um in the way that you are kind of forced to be when you're in that situation. You take it day by day. And so that's kind of the truth of that brutal honesty, of that just having to be present in the moment, of that kind of living without a sense of consequences, and the humor that can be poured from that, but humor that is essentially just truth. um and just, yeah, how we could play in that space in various different ways.
I love the interactions between Grace and her nurse. I mean, Grace is brutally honest, and the exchanges of dialogue between the two was a
Yeah,
perfect addition to this whole storyline. I mean, they were like the little breaks within the main storyline with each exchange between both of them. It was just so funny. And like you said, it was really honest, and you really didn't even hold anything back, even with the little sexual innuendos.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think all of Gracie's interactions for me are so entertaining because you don't know what to expect from her. She's just a woman that is going to say exactly how she feels. Um and it there's sort of like this thing of Grace just allowed herself to reclaim her identity, right? So there's an element of her being, hypersexual and bold and all of these things about her that she, just didn't want to give up in the face of her mortality. And that was something else that was important to me when I was writing it was these two characters who reclaim joy but also reclaim who they are as human beings, their humanity. Um, yeah,
Yeah, in one of the first scenes where Grace pulls a cigarette out and the nurse goes, "There's no smoking in here." And Grace, just the way she looks at the nurse, like, "Really? Do you know my condition? What does it matter?" And just that alone was just so funny. And I love the way you added this into the film. But then this film takes this magical turn. It's the swimming pool becoming the fountain of youth. Uh, that was probably one of my favorite parts of the story. How did you come up with that idea?
it was based on that the thing of grieving yourself that I sort of spoke about earlier, and it was the rules of the pool was always yes, it's a pool that reverts you back to your younger self, um, but in the conception of it, it was really just this idea of bringing you back to the version of yourself you're grieving the most, which for them as elderly people is their youth, and obviously also being being young but also being healthy. Um, and so that's where that idea came from. And so let's give them the illusion of that, but ultimately they have to go on a journey where they accept who they are and they accept their reality. Um, but what does that magical illusion give them on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the last scene in the pool truly shows how we will fight for the right to stay alive. Flo Wilson's acting of coming out of the water, I just felt the complete fullness of her character.
Yeah, yeah, that was it was I remember writing it and just feeling something as I was writing it, and then you film it and you feel it when you film it, and then you even me watching it back, just seeing the power of that, because that's essentially it. It's finding her fight for life, and she finds that fight for life in Mido's character, and at which point she's almost kind of fighting for the life that she has, despite it being limited, despite not knowing how long of it left she has. But she
Well,
wants that, and she
ye-
fights.
indeed. Now, for you as a director, uh, what was it like, and how did you film the underwater scenes?
Well, I wasn't the one going under the water. That's full credit to the underwater cinematographer that we had come, called Genevieve Reyes, along with the DP and the camera team. And we shot it in the shallow end of the pool, um, because we just wanted it to look. We wanted around it to kind of look originally, especially in the first pool sequences, to have this sense of infinity around them. Um, but it was all shot in the lower end of the pool, so it was all fairly safe and fun. And um, to be honest, it was really helpful that day because we were shooting midsummer and it was like 38 degrees outside, and so I think we all welcomed the idea of filming in a pool. Um,
Well, I guess too, filming in the shallow end, not only is it safer, but the lighting would
yeah,
be brighter compared to filming in the deep end of the pool. So that
yeah,
definitely has a an element to it as well. And And I think I understand now why you won Best Editing, because here we have both the characters jumping into the pool. Then you have a different set of actors playing their younger selves,
Yeah.
and the transition between the two was seamless.
Yeah, Max Reynolds, who is our editor, is a genius. And it, we went through so many different variations of that edit. Um, and there's stuff that doesn't go in, and there's stuff that you really love, but it's just not doing the piece overall justice. And we also really wanted to keep it to 20 minutes as well. Um, but the one thing that we had was that because I had worked with Max in the writing stages, I always think it's quite interesting to bring your editor within the development, so that when we get to that point when we're editing, they know exactly what you want to say in every scene, and they know the story, they know what the emotional truth of every moment is, so that when we're coming up against situations where we may have to lose a scene, or we didn't end up shooting this on because of whatever reason, um, it's fairly easy to find a solution around that. We're both on the same page because we both know exactly what we wanted out of it. And Max is so emotionally in tuned to every scene, and it was such a pleasure working with him, and he too really took to the story because he had lost a loved one to cancer, and so there's intrinsically he understood the story and the emotion of it, and that the editing process and the editing journey with him was truly incredible, and it's a much deserved award for him.
Yeah, I mean, out of all of the films, and I've seen a lot of great films this season, but yours really stands out because I've seen other films where they use the topic of grief, but yours goes beyond that because you bring in love, it's heartwarming, it's humorous.
Yeah.
Uh, you don't take your eyes off the screen when you're watching your film because there's just so much going on that you're wanting to follow these characters. For you, what process did you use to actually cast your film? I mean, did you do auditions? Did you have direct contacts with some of the actors? How did you bring these amazing people together?
Um, we didn't end up doing auditions because when I first saw Flo and when I first saw Syed, I kind of just knew. I was just like, this is Grace and this is Mido. Um, and so it was just about giving them, the offer, and because I'd seen Flo in a couple of other things that she had done, and that sort of deadpan look that you were alluding to earlier was exactly what I wanted, because I wanted the comedy to kind of not be overplayed. And I think the comedy ends up breathing so much more because of that. And she has such an incredible emotional range, and I didn't have to worry about her dealing with that stuff um, either. So I knew Flo was going to be Grace. And with Syed, I came across his Instagram page. And just from his Instagram page, I was like, this guy is Mido. Um, just his personality is very much like Mido, but he's based in LA. And I was like, God, how are we going to do this? Because we have just a certain amount of budget. Um, and unfortunately, it was a budget that we just couldn't afford him to come over. Um, but he just loved the script so much that he paid for his own flight, flew to the UK to do the film, because he was just so in love with the story and the script that he went above and beyond for it.
Well, you could not have cast any better than this. I mean, those two together. I mean,
Um,
as a director, um, how much directing did you actually have to do with their parts, or did you just kind of let them emotionally feel their way through this script?
Yeah, I very much just let the actors emotionally kind of feel their way through it, and I never really prescribe what a performance should look like. Um, because then if if you're pushing a performance to just be an image that you've had in your head, the more you do that, I think um, the more unrealistic and the more sort of uh, limited it feels. It doesn't feel natural. Um, and so I often just kind of, as long as it feels truthful, as long as I believe it, as long as I feel something when I'm watching it on the monitor, and they just really understood and grabbed these characters by the scruff of the neck and like really ran with them. And so there was very little directing that I had to do on my end. A lot of the time it was just fine tuning slow, certain moments, or just exploring a moment. A lot of it was just exploring moments with them, being like, that was great, but should we maybe try this? And what happens if we do this? And just kind of it was so collaborative. We were there trying to explore what the multitude of truths were. We weren't there being like, this is what we have to do. um so it was very explorative in that way, and they're just amazing, and they're so courageous and so generous.
The one of the scenes that literally made me laugh out loud, I think we've all been there, is when the lobster and the jellyfish are on stage and they're singing their song, and 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 Grace literally does the thing that we all wish we could have done at least once in our lives. But for
Yeah,
her, what was so hilarious was that here she is facing her own mortality, and she's like, "You're wasting my time here on earth with this horrible song." and and I was like, not that I want everybody to be doing that, but that scene is just so hilarious.
but it's funny because when we were filming that, the actual performers, Jellyfish and Lobster, are incredibly talented singers. And I remember they were doing it, and I was like, guys, you have to be bad. Like, you want the audience to be on Grace's side when she kind of just goes at them. Um, and so it was really funny to film because the two actors who were playing the jellyfish and lobster, they genuinely are such incredible singers and musicians. And so when they did it the first few times, they were doing it really well, and I was like, no, let's do this again. And so having them go through the process of having to deliberately do it badly, so that we could all be on Grace's side on in that moment.
Well,
So I'm
for
glad.
well, for the performers, was it hard for them to be bad? And then when they started to become bad, were they trying not to laugh while doing it?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It was such a fun shoot that day, and I think the more bad that they got, the more fun they just started having with it. Um, and yeah, there was so much laughter in between takes. If we look back at the behind the scenes footage, as soon as I say cut, the entire crew and cast are just laughing. Um, which was such a beautiful experience, because that I think that was the case for most of the filming of this project. Despite it being about what it's about, there was so much laughter in the making of it, and so much fun.
You know, the last scene, brilliant. For those who haven't seen it, it's a brilliant ending. And I am so happy that you ended it that way. But what caught my eye, and this is probably the strangest thing you're going to hear about your film, when the camera is pointed towards the sea, and all you see is the back of Grace and Miko,
Mhm.
and I paused it because I noticed it right off the bat. Why I noticed it, I do not know why. But the horizon was at the top of the frame. The moment I saw that, um, did you ever see The Fablemans?
Yes.
Okay, you know the very last scene in The Fablemans where John Ford goes, "You see where the horizon is?" He goes, "If your horizon's at the top or if it's at the bottom, you got a great film. But if it's in the middle, it's not." And when I saw that frame of your film, I went, John Ford. And I said, and then I went, it is a great film.
Thank you so much. I mean, The Fablemans came out after we had filmed. I wish I had caught that piece of advice. I mean, we just got really lucky that day. But the sea was my dad's favorite place in the world to be, and it's mine, and it's where he spent a lot of time following his diagnosis, and so I knew I wanted to end it there, and there's something really sort of soul soothing and healing about the sea and about the horizon, and so I and also just that sense of infinity and that vastness of the sea when you look out at it and there's nothing sort of on the other side of it, um, and it felt like a beautiful place in transition for these two characters to go to, and kind of explore the idea of transitioning from one space to another, but in a way that didn't feel heavy, in a way that felt quite poetic and beautiful.
You know,
Yeah.
the ending was cleansing. Um, it was refreshing. It wasn't sad at all. And it reminds me of a saying. I had interviewed former world champion surfer Sean Thompson, and he wrote a book called The Surf and the Sea. And in his book, he says, you know, when you're standing on the shore and you're looking out upon the ocean, leave fear on the sand. And when I saw those two go into the water, I went, they left fear on the sand. And it's just, again, Yasmin, you have one of the most beautiful films I have seen this season. And to me, I'm going to be very biased here. I think you deserve to win the BAFTA.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Well, how does
Um,
it feel to have a BAFTA nomination?
yeah, I mean, just being there for me is the win, and I've seen I've seen the other films and they're incredible. So for me, it's like w- to be up there with them is such a huge honor, and to obviously be nominated for a BAFTA is incredible. And but the journey this film has gone on and through the various festivals over the past year, and just seeing audiences' reaction to it, and seeing the amount of messages that I've had from people to say that they relate to it or they resonate with it in some way because they are currently going through that or have been through that, and yet the film brought them so much laughter and joy and also equal amounts of tears, um, but just seeing that connection and being able to connect with so many people because of it has been so just beyond words. So for me, I think that's truly the win, and also the win in actually just being there and being nominated. Um, yeah, I couldn't have asked for just a more beautiful reception.
Well,
For
what is next for you in your filmmaking journey?
well, at the moment, I'm working on developing the feature for Jellyfish and Lobster. Um, so that's really exciting, and then also a bunch of other sort of projects as well that I'm sort of just working away at. So we'll see what happens. We'll see.
I
I
was
don't say
I
much.
was wondering if you were going to be working on a feature because I can see this as a feature film.
Yeah, I mean, as I was writing the short, it just kind of happened. It kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and so I actually had to wheel it in. They were like, "This is not a short anymore. Like, remember, this is a short film, and you try and fit all of this in. You're going to do an injustice to it." And so I ended up having to just to bench so much that I wanted to explore and put in. Um, and so for me, it just felt really natural to kind of go back and do that. So hopefully we'll see what comes of that.
Well, the good thing is you've already written quite a bit that you've kind of put off to the side. So your job is not easy, but at least you're ahead of the game when it comes to creating the feature.
Yeah, I mean, but an idea always goes through so many motions, and and it changes and it morphs, and like I think the making of anything is it's kind of like it's an alive thing, and so it's just constantly kind of moving and changing and altering, and you almost have to give it the freedom and the space to do that. So even though there was a lot there to begin, there's still a lot of um, sort of angles and things that I still want to explore and bring into it and see how that changes it. But still holding on to the kind of crux of what the short film is, and the tone and the heart of it,
Well, I know,
and the characters.
well, I know you're going to do a stellar job on that script. And ladies and gentlemen, Yasmin Afifi's BAFTA nominated short, Jellyfish and Lobster, is fun, heartwarming, full of life while facing the inevitable of life ending. It is absolutely deserving of its nomination and could very well be the upcoming winner at the BAFTAs. Now, when you have a chance to see this incredible film, do so, because we need stories like this one in our lives. There is mortality and immortality, and there is jellyfish and lobster, which balances both to absolute perfection. Thank you, Yasmin, for coming on to the show and sharing your wonderful film with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those beautiful words. I'm almost kind of teary here. Thank you so much.
Well, you are so very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, hey, you can catch all of the replays of our interviews with top film directors like Yasmin Afifi, also producers and screenwriters, actors, and we even have stunt people on the show and more on our website at bondoncinema.com. We are also available on YouTube and a dozen audio platforms as well. I want to thank you for watching and listening. And as for me, I'll see you at the movies and probably from the red carpet.